Now we turn our attention to the here and now and to our spirits as we begin our worship service.
Good morning. Come into this community of hope.
Entren a esta comunidad de esperanza.
At this sacred time, we remember those whose feet are stilled and who laugh with us no more.
En esta hora sagrada, recordamos los que sus pies están de descanso y no se ríen con nosotros más. En esta hora sagrada tomamos un momento en silencio para dar honor a la muerte de Walter Wallace, un señor de Filadelfia que fue matado por policía este lunes pasado.
At this sacred time, we pause for a moment of silence to honor and mourn the death of Walter Wallace, the Philadelphian who was killed by police this past Monday.
Empanadas, pan de muertos, talamales, calaveras de azúcar, cempasúchil, velas, visitando los abuelos en el Campo Santo. Mariachis tocando guitarra y cantando. Esto es una celebración muy importante, el Día de los Muertos. Nosotros estamos aquí para celebrar en nuestra comunidad religiosa.
Empanadas, sweetbread, tamales, sugar skulls, skeletons, marigolds, candles, visiting ancestors in the cemetery, mariachis playing guitar and singing. This is a very important celebration. The Day of the Dead. We are here to celebrate in our religious community.
Bienvenidos a nuestra celebración de la vida.
Welcome to our celebration of life.
Good morning. I'm Ryan Hurd. I'm the Director of Spiritual Development here at USG. And so our service today honors Dia de los Muertos, in English, the Day of the Dead. And we've been honoring the beauty of this tradition here at USG for many years. Now, for those of us who do not have a Latino heritage, we can think of ourselves as respectful guests of a holiday that belongs to others. Yet all of us belong here to remember those who have died and a celebration of our ancestors. Also, our faith as Unitarian Universalists shares roots with Dia de los Muertos, and that is the holiday of All Souls Day. Universalists in our country began observing All Souls Day in 1878, generally the Sunday following November 2nd. Now, for the Universalists in Boston, All Souls Day was a time to affirm all those who have died, not just Christians. These Universalists believe that everyone who died goes to heaven. All Souls Day has deep roots as a Christian holiday, and truthfully, it's a painful history. It's linked to European invasion of other peoples. Colonizers would merge Christian holidays with the original native or indigenous celebrations. And this was done to weaken cultures so that native people were easier to control. Dia de los Muertos is one of these holidays, but its history has a powerful twist that's especially relevant for our times. It was an ancient celebration among indigenous people in Mexico, dates back 3,000 years. Many native tribes celebrated it in midsummer though, not now, midsummer, to honor ancestors. When European Christians came to southern Mexico, they moved the date of the festival to coincide with All Souls Day in November. But in this case, many of the traditions originally associated with the native holiday remain. And this is because the indigenous peoples of Mexico refused to back down when Spanish colonizers tried to force them to stop their annual rituals. They resisted. And in this way, Dia de los Muertos has actually become a symbol of cultural resistance to oppression. So honoring the dead in this context is literally invoking the spirit of ancestral resistance and empowerment. So in that spirit, in honoring that, we're going to watch a short film about the traditions of the Day of the Dead. And, viewing this film has become a bit of a tradition here at USG as well. We've seen this film in the past, and it's one of those that's so good to see again. It follows the extraordinary experiences of a young girl who's grieving the death of her mother. To balance her sadness, she discovers the joy and the power of remembrance. So now, let us celebrate some more.
Some people in our communities are in difficult periods of grieving a recent death of a loved one. Passing of a loved one doesn't have to be recent for raw emotions to cause sadness and pain. For all those experiencing harder phases of mourning, we lift up our hearts in condolences and prayer. For many years, our congregation has celebrated Day of the Dead. Among many blessings, this holiday creates sacred space for us to honor a variety of beliefs about what happens after we die. Many of our Unitarian Universalist ancestors believed strongly in an afterlife. The name Universalism itself was derived from a strong theological belief in universal salvation for all people. Origen was a 3rd century Roman theologian who believed everyone goes to heaven. Origen's influence arrived in North America with force in the late 1770s when John Murray first arrived from England to the New Jersey shore. John Murray and others preached the message which many despised. An infinitely loving God would not condemn finite human beings to an infinite hell. Everybody goes to heaven. Universalists passionately evangelized their good news. An example of the fruits of their labor is that at one time, Philadelphia actually had 8 Universalist churches. One of the most popular names of our churches is, in America, is All Souls. This UU name comes from the belief that all souls come from the same source and will return to the same source. Transcendentalists like Emerson and Thoreau believed that upon death, the soul of the person passed on to the oversoul, connecting all. Explicitly honoring that part of our religious tradition, we can more easily make some of the connections we so deeply desire. In many Eastern, African, and Latin American cultures, there is much less dualism between life and death. Concepts of stopping life and starting death almost don't make sense. Buddhism teaches reincarnation. Religious humanism teaches that after a person dies, their soul is the memory we have of that person. The body of a loved one dies, but the love does not. The love and legacy live on in us and beyond.
This Day of the Dead service happens during such a critical election cycle. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the use of conscience in the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. And today, in this Day of the Dead, we're spending a significant portion of our service honoring those who have gone before us as heroes of democracy, playing roles large and small. As of today, up to 85 million Americans have already voted by standing in the rain with wet feet or tired bodies, or figuring out a way to get that ballot and putting it in the mail. These folks have been fulfilling what John Lewis called the precious sacred vote. And we know on Tuesday, tens of millions, if not over 100 million other people are going to go out and exercise what John Lewis called the most powerful, nonviolent tool we have in democracy. On Tuesday, our church, 6511 Lincoln Drive, will serve as a polling place for the first time, and with many of our folks and others volunteering here and around the region and around the state to protect safe and fair voting. We do this honoring and channeling the energy of the folks who went before us, who said every voice counts. And many times they said, it doesn't have to be this way. We can get together to make a change. Let's name right now, there is so much challenge in our communities, so much anxiety and anger. And right now, the death of Walter Wallace, the unnecessary shooting of Mr. Wallace in West Philadelphia on Wednesday, is so traumatic and tragic. And I know I'm not alone in being sick and tired of being sick and tired. We can channel those who went before us today, who were sick and tired of being sick and tired and knew it didn't have to be that way. Today, as we lift up these heroes, let's feel their energy. Let's feel the energy of all those who will, most everyone will be left unspoken. There's so many heroes that we know about. Let's channel their courage and their strength as we go forward and saying it doesn't have to be this way. We want accountability on delivery of mental health services in our city and our region. We want accountability for police action. We want health care and schools that are good and productive for all people, regardless of what zip code they live in or what their income level. We want to honor science and medicine and public health over fiction and lies. We want to honor a world where everybody can love who they want and feminism is for all. And we want to take care of our Mother Earth and be good stewards. We have 4 speakers. I'm really so thrilled about this lineup. Her Honor, the Honorable Linda Bernstein, who became a female judge in 1981, will speak about recently deceased Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ingrid Brown will speak about the Reverend James Reeb, who she worked for in Philadelphia at the YMCA. So he was a civil rights martyr. In 1965, Jimmy Lee Jackson civil rights leader, was killed in February. King made the call to Selma. Reeb and many others, 500 Unitarian ministers went. James Reeb was killed. And those two were part of the straw that broke the camel's back. And Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act in August of '65, naming both of those murders as he did that. Linda Brunn will speak about her father, Unitarian minister Reverend Edward Cahill, who was a courageous, strong civil rights leader. And I will speak about my father, behind the scenes helper, Richard Mathias.
I graduated from law school in 1972, one of 20 women in a class of 300. Now law schools are about 50-50 women and men. Mark and I were married, but we did not have our first child for 5 years, while we each established our legal careers. When I became an administrative law judge some 9 years later, I was one of 12 women in a cadre of about 1,000 ALJs. Now the ALJ Corps is also half and half. Throughout my work life, I always worked full-time, except for 3 maternity leaves. Up until the late 70s and early 80s, a woman's place in public life was greatly circumscribed. The ways are too numerous to mention, but include that a woman could only obtain credit based on her husband's financial information. Women could be limited to fewer hours of work. In some states, the drinking age was higher for women than for men. Many provisions of the Social Security Act discriminated against women by failing to provide benefits to fathers, say, who wished to stay home after the working mother had passed away, or failing to pay elderly widowers benefits unless they could show that they had received more than half their support from their deceased wife. In my last year of law school, I took a course called Women and the Law, taught by Norma Shapiro, who went on to become the first woman district court judge in the Eastern District Federal District Court. Women and the Law was an emerging and confusing field. There wasn't even a textbook, merely a collection of Xeroxed cases. Although we were women in the class and therefore already on a non-traditional path, we struggled with understanding the jurisprudence. We did not want to erode what we thought of as protections for women, but we did not think the two genders should be treated differently. Sometimes it was hard to reconcile these two impulses. At that time, there was not a single United States Supreme Court case that successfully established the right of a woman to equal protection of the laws. Prohibitions on women's activities had always been upheld as being based on the objective nature of things, namely that women were suited to be wife and mother, that women needed the protection of either a father or a husband, that women were incompetent public actors, unable to perform independently. About that same time, Ruth Bader Ginsburg founded the Women's Rights Center at Rutgers Law School. She represented many women challenging gender-based laws all the way to the Supreme Court, winning 5 of the 6 cases she argued there. One case challenged the presumption that a man will be chosen over a woman to be the administrator of an estate, in this case, the estate of their deceased son. Another case challenged the failure to provide a housing allowance for a female Air Force member, although a male member would automatically receive an allowance. Another challenged the Florida law that made jury duty optional for women. Ruth Bader Ginsburg laid out arguments against these various laws and their presumptions about women, that a woman could not handle complicated business dealings like administering an estate, that a woman could only be a bartender in an establishment run by her husband or father, else it might be too dangerous for her. That a woman should not be required to participate in jury duty because she was needed at home. And that a man would not wish to care for an infant child if his wife died. All these laws were based on stereotypes of women. Either women were to live out the role of wife and mother, or if they happened to engage in work for pay, they would be the subordinate breadwinner, and laws could make that assumption in replacing income. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's arguments provided the underpinnings for later actions that established the unassailable truth that women deserve the equal protection of the law. It was true that a woman might be a homemaker, but a woman defendant accused of murdering her abusive husband needed women on the jury if it was to be of her peers. A woman had the same Social Security tax taken out of her pay as a man, so her tax should pay for the same benefits for her family if she died. The guiding principle, which Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued over and over, is that laws based on stereotypes harm women because of the incredibly wide variety of life experiences that women can, should, and do pursue. Women may be wives and mothers or choose not to be. They may or may not choose to engage in work that is dirty, disgusting, or dangerous. They may couple work outside the home with work inside the home, either before, during, or while raising children. They may make more money than their spouse or less. Since there is no one true path for all women, laws cannot be based on a presumption of how a woman's life will play out. This picture was of a panel of women judges in 1995. You can see me on the top row at the left. Except for the two Supreme Court justices who were sitting in the middle of the front row, we were all graduates of the University of Pennsylvania Law School. A female professor who was a former law clerk to Justice O'Connor had wangled Justices O'Connor and Ginsburg to serve on the panel. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's career as a Supreme Court justice was just beginning. She went on to advance women's rights through her brilliant decisions, always expanding the rights of women and others, always challenging the assumptions. Over the years, she wrote majority opinions, and then as the makeup of the court changed, she wrote brilliant dissents. At the time of her death, she was an international celebrity, as famous as the most famous rock star. She had a faux rap nickname. She was a meme, a calendar, a mug, a t-shirt, 2 movies, and many books. She was mourned by millions. Along the way, she had a husband who adored her and put his career behind hers. They raised 2 children and had several grandchildren. Her life was a living testament to the legal principle she espoused, that women do not have to follow a prescribed path, but can follow the life that feels and is right to them.
On the occasion of the Day of the Dead, I would like to speak about Jim Reeb. Who was Jim Reeb? He was born on New Year's Day, 1927 in Wichita, Kansas, the only son of church-going parents. He grew up in Casper, Wyoming, was church-loving and preaching at a very young age. He loved the outdoors of Wyoming and had a collection of petrified wood, which he would find. After graduating from St. Olaf's College and newly married, he and his wife Marie drove in one of those large 1950s cars to Princeton, New Jersey to attend Princeton Seminary. His first professional position was with the Philadelphia General Hospital as chaplain. It was during this time that he came closer to Unitarianism. Before he could hope for a calling at a Unitarian church, he worked for several years as youth director in the West Philadelphia Y. It was there that his devotion working with inner city youth germinated. In all the years as minister at All Souls Church in Washington, D.C., work with inner city youth was his focus. Likely based on this experience, he was hired by the Friends for a position in Boston, working with housing integration and youth work. It was there on Sunday night in early March 1965 that he heard the call from Martin Luther King for all ministers to come to Selma, Alabama to march with the group that was beaten up that day, that Sunday, by the local police and militia. He and his wife were aware of the dangers, but he knew he needed to go. The outcome was that Jim Reeb and 2 other ministers were attacked from behind at the end of the day in the dark. Jim was hit from behind with a bat, fell to the ground, and died when life-sustaining efforts were halted. He left behind his parents, his widow, and 4 underage children. He was 38 years old. To me, he's a martyr and a Unitarian saint. I have a personal connection with Jim Reeb, which is that as an immigrant, my very first day in Philadelphia, through directions from others, I encountered him, and he hired me as his secretary. We worked together for a long time. And on April 3rd, 1959, sorry, I don't remember. Here's the date, April 3rd, 1959, he married Bob and me.
Hello, Philadelphia. Mariachi Flores. Por amor se han creado los hombres en la paz. Por amor hay quien haya querido regalar una estrella. Por amor fue una vez al Calvario con una cruz a cuestas. Aquel que también por amor entregó el alma entera. Por amor se confunden las aguas y en la fuente se besan. Y en las alas de las mariposas los colores se crean. Por amor ha existido en el mundo siempre tanta belleza, y el color de la naturaleza se pintó por amor. Por amor estoy de ti y seré toda la vida mientras viva. Por amor, una noche cualquiera, un amante se entrega. Por amor, con un beso se calman unos labios que esperan. Por amor, ya no llevo las cruces que me dio el sufrimiento. Y por ti, lo que fuera mi suerte se cambió por amor. Por amor.
I'm here to share some thoughts about my dad, Reverend Edward A. Cahill, who was born a Unitarian and became a UU minister in Boston, Massachusetts, the heart of Unitarianism. I should go back and say he was a Unitarian until he became a UU minister. My dad's ministry was always inextricably tied to concepts of democracy and justice. It was almost as if he felt you did not have a faith if you did not act on it. It certainly was true for him. He was an agnostic humanist. He was a religious humanist, and he deeply believed that it was up to human beings to create just societies for the preservation of our species and for the salvation of our earth. He was an early anti-fascist in his approach to the Spanish Civil War. That was his first big cause in this world. And he moved on from there to an acute awareness of anti-Semitism, anti-fascism through Hitler, for Hitler, and worked intensely in World War II for the Unitarian Service Committee that was working with refugees in the European theater. That was the only time he wasn't tied to a parish ministry. The rest of his career of almost 50 years was spent in various congregations, first in New England, and then in the Deep South, and then back to Pittsburgh and New Hampshire. In every case, he was an advocate for democracy, civil rights, human rights, and an active participant in the ACLU as his major community commitment. He's often thought of as a hero because of his leadership during the civil rights movement, particularly the early civil rights movement, and his support of Martin Luther King, Whitney Young, and several other very important civil rights leaders. His way was to back the infrastructures that were needed to support the public demonstrations of leadership of King, the marchers, whatever. He raised money, etc. But I think his biggest contribution was his work with his congregations to help congregations who were living in hostile communities in the South, both Atlanta and Charlotte, North Carolina, to hold on to their own values, to be able to articulate them, and to have the courage to stand up for them. That was very true in the Atlanta, Georgia church as well as Charlotte, but my story is about the Atlanta church. When he went to the Atlanta church, it was just turning from a fellowship to a church. It was housed in an old Baptist church, and there were many people who had just recently found UUism. At that time, it was still Unitarianism. He helped that church decide to be publicly integrated. Many of the members lost their jobs or were threatened to lose their jobs. He bolstered their courage and their bravery in facing the implications of their own religious faith. And I'm very, very proud of him for that. I think his oratorical skills, his ability to support people when they were frightened, and his own modeling of brave leadership contributed to that vote and that ongoing commitment. And that's one of the many reasons I see my father as a hero of democracy and UUism all his adult life.
My father, Richard Matthias, is not a hero of democracy that any historian will write about. My father and mother found Unitarianism when they were dating in grad school in Madison, Wisconsin, and dad stayed a Unitarian. Mom and dad stayed Unitarians. My mom's still alive, and dad was for the rest of his life. Dad was a man who was committed to doing the right thing and making society safe and fair for everybody. After the shooting of President Reagan and the killing of Reagan's press secretary, James Brady, my father spent the next 30 years of his life writing letters on gun control. He was obsessed with gun control and wrote to every mayor, sheriff, state, and national congressperson he could find that was connected to his address. For decades, my mother was an in front of the crowd leader with the League of Women Voters, constantly working for informed and free elections. My father was her helper. Dad drove her to the meetings, would arrive early with her, help set up the chairs, make the coffee, hand out name tags in the hallway, talk people's ears off, and then help close it all down at the end of the night. It's really important that we raise up that all the people like my father are the yeast in the bread of democracy. As they add their efforts, democracy rises.
La tierra del tango te abrigó en un barrio de Flores, Buenos Aires. Tu padre con origen de Piamontes y tu madre siempre al cuidado de la casa. No fue casualidad. Tú ya estabas a tu pueblo destinado y un honor seguro más grande no habrá. Que igual que tu tierra también llevar su nombre, flores tu camino adornarán, y estas notas que me salen del alma, y ahora México y el mundo cantará a Francisco su amor, a ritmo de guapango. El Señor, this song for the folks. Gracias. I hope you like it. Espero les guste.
Muchas gracias. Gracias, Filadelfia.
All right. We have now reached the time and beloved community where we make space to honor our deceased loved ones. This time is important and sacred to our community as we create space for us to honor those that have gone before us. We are not in a hurry, as this is a very comfortable, supportive community. So whatever emotions you may experience at this time, please know that we hold you in love and light. So at this time, we are going to say the names of our deceased loved ones, and this is how we're going to do it. So please raise your blue virtual hand found at the bottom of the participant list. If you can't find it, if you can't find where to raise your virtual hand, please wave your actual hand, and I'm going to call the name that's on your Zoom screen so that you can show your picture and say the name only of your deceased loved one. I'll start. All right, there we go. Sarah Johnson. Okay. Please unmute yourself and say your name. So Rudy Sprinkle and Andrea.
Right. And the name we're trying to say is Rose Barsovic, my mother.
Thank you. Max's mama.
Hi, I'm Caroline. This is my son, Max.
Lucinda Lee. You have to unmute yourself.
My parents, Frederick Lee and Martha Lee.
Eileen Teddy.
These are my grandparents, my nanny and Poppy Lloyd.
Sarah West.
Bob West.
Elizabeth McGoran.
I'm sorry, that's my father, Artemis Lawrence Holmes.
Jerry Caruso.
Yes.
That's my dad and my mom. Dad Lou, my mom Olga.
Lynn Kalish.
These are, excuse me, my parents, Shari Fenyu Kalish, and my dad, Leonard L. Kalish.
Deborah Ward.
My parents, Genevieve and George Whitford.
Alice Parker.
My husband, Jack Parker.
Diane Sharp.
Wait till Alice gets it.
My father, John Douglas Sharp, and my brother, John Stewart Sharp.
Edward Collick.
This is, oops. Sorry. This is my mother-in-law, Helen Esther Neuendorfer Collet.
Collet. Listen, if I'm butchering you guys' names, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Vanessa Lowe.
Hi, everyone. This is a picture of me with my mother, Janie Mae Ferguson Lowe.
Linda Bernstein.
My sister, Susan Elizabeth Torcaso.
Rebecca Bunting.
Unmute.
You have to unmute yourself.
You're muted.
You can go again. Take your time.
What's the space bar?
Hold down the space bar. Try that.
I'm not sure why we can't hear them. I don't show them as muted.
Shoot.
Type it in the chat.
Yeah, type it in the chat.
Get the pit fix.
And we feel the love. When something like glitch like this happens, we feel the love.
Get the kid to fix it.
Okay. Are you going to put it in the chat? I could say the name for you. All right, for Rebecca Bunting, it's Maggie and Grandpa Bunting. We have Mr. Alucius.
Yes, Chris. This is my friend David Giovacchini. I miss you, man. We wrote great songs together.
Wonderful. Maggie Bird.
Hi. This is my mother and my grandmother, Joan Caracappa and Harriet Cosley, and my wife. And this is my mom's partner of 33 years, Nancy Lawrence, in the blue, and this is me with my brother Nick.
Nancy Anderson.
This is a picture of my aunt, Patricia, Reverend Patricia Pardee Glore.
Jody Hill.
Hi, this is a picture of my sisters and I with my dearly departed mom and dad, Eileen and Joe.
Lee and Sarah and Ambler.
We remember our fathers, Merton Meineke,
and beloved pediatrician Charlie Hertz, whose anniversary is this week, 12 years.
Ryan Hurd.
Hi, we wanted to honor Samuel Ozer, who was a USG childcare staff, but also our family babysitter.
Gerald Whalen.
My parents, Jim and Eva Whalen, and
I'm Eileen, and these are my parents, Mary and Charlie McCarthy, when they got married in 1940.
Carolyn Scott. All right. Andrea Perry.
This is my father, Bernard Nathaniel Lewis, and my mother-in-law, Bernice Lewis.
Jim Salam.
My dad, William Salome.
Blanca Pacheco.
Pacheco.
Pacheco, thank you.
Sorry, I was holding a picture of my dad and just got lost in my hand. Dad Salomon, he passed 7 years ago.
John Davis.
This is my father-in-law, Charles Goodman. And let's see if I can get this. And this is my mother. I'm not sure you can see it. Oh, it turned out pretty good. Helen Davis.
Ann Bauer.
This is my mother, Janet Doan, and I also want to honor Samuel Ozier, who is my son's best friend.
Carolyn Cotton.
This is my father, Carol Edwin Thayer.
Kristen Shipler.
This is Micah with Grandpa Rich at USG. Thinking of Grandpa today.
Christine Ross.
Here, give me the one you got. I'll hold it.
I'm Chloe, and here is my great grandma named Elizabeth Race.
Celeste Lamb. All right. Carolyn Scott.
You called on me already.
Gotcha. All right. If there's anybody that didn't want to be spotlighted but wishes to share a photo of their deceased loved ones, please unmute yourself and do so now.
You say Nancy, right?
Nancy Radcliffe. This is my husband, Harry
Not up here.
Radcliffe.
Not up here. You're not on screen.
Am I on screen?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Nancy.
I have one more. My father, Daniel Preston Dozier.
Nice.
Corinne?
Yes, I wanted to share. My dog, my boxer Daisy, passed away,
Great.
and we were together a long time, and she meant a lot to me.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, Rick Rhodes, and this is my mom and dad, Dusty and Skipper Rhodes, and also my sister Sandy.
Thank you. Is that Gina Allen?
Yes.
Go ahead.
This is my piano teacher of 10 years, Adelaide Belser.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yes, this is a picture of my dear friend Anna Maria Monferrato from Florence, Italy. And then also my father, Martin Needham, my loving father, Martin Needham from Maine. And then this is a picture of my dear friend Caroline's son, Max.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, this is a picture of our dear friend, Jim Bishop. And he's the one in, I don't know, left or right, but he's wearing the plaid shirt.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to share, but didn't necessarily want to be spotlighted?
Yeah,
I'll share. Okay. I'll share.
Hey, Susie.
Hi, this is my cat, Mesa, who was with me for almost 22 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And my mom, Lovey Bash. And my father, David. I'd like to honor them today.
Thank you.
I will share.
Who's
Miss
that?
Judy Rhodes.
Oh.
Judy. Thank you. Go ahead.
These are my parents, Winnie and Jim Stewart. I don't know if you can see them.
Yes.
And this is my dear friend, Laura Lee. And I would like to honor all of them.
Thank you.
Try one more time. After that, I gave up.
This is Stephanie Shank.
Stephanie?
This is my dad, Ron Bacon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Try one more time.
All right. Is this Stephanie?
Yes, no. You.
Is this it? Last call.
I'm trying.
Oh, there you are, Myra. Sorry about that.
At my age, there are too many to give pictures of, but I did want to mention some names. My late husband, Morris Silver, Howard Silver's uncle, by the way. My parents, Fanny and William Weiss. My sister, Ruth Weiss, who helped me raise my children from the time their father died. My friend, Marlene Weiner, and a very old friend who was one of the first to die of this wonderful virus, Bernie Klein.
Wow. Thank you, Myra. We have from Gloria. She would like to honor and remember David Williford, Caroline would like to remember Nancy Dearden. Andrea Perry would like to remember, you guys moving too fast here.
Berdine Whedon.
Berdine Whedon. Yeah, I just got lost in the weeds there. Okay. Jess would like to remember Berdine as well. Lynn would like to remember Betty Greenberg and Mitty Hamill. Deborah Ward would like to remember Kathy Bonanno and David Bonanno. And Mia Schiff would like to remember grandparents, parents, their best friends, Bevy and Dick, her husband's grandparents, and sister, Leslie. And Ellie Wagner would like to remember Meade Maxwell. Let's see, we have this part off here. There we go. All right. Shobi Canal would like to remember Reclaire Canal, Shobi's mother. Bradley Flam would like to remember their good friend Andy Trackman. Meg Ryan would like to remember her dad, Ron Ryan. Mia Schiff would like to remember Floyd's parents. Alice Parker would like to remember Robin Greenstein, who died of the COVID virus. And Melissa Guerrero would like to remember Ellen, who left too soon. All right. I want to thank you all so much for sharing. This was a very powerful and moving part of the service. And we're going to move on to our responsive reading. We remember them. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of winter, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. We'll now join All Souls Church in singing Spirit of Life in Spanish and then in English. The lyrics will be in the chat.
This church and congregation are places of love, giving, and community, where we support each other in times of need and work to make the world a better place, a world that our ancestors and deceased loved ones would want to be. Please be as generous as you can to support this congregation and community.
Al despuntar la mañana,
Latifa will now extinguish the chalice as we return to our lives of community and service. All are invited to linger for fellowship in the breakout rooms after Kent's closing words in the postlude. You don't need to do anything but wait for the Zoom room manager to whisk you into one. Blessings to you in the coming week. After Kent says the closing words, please pass the virtual piece to your neighbors.
Friends, in closing, I lift up my friend and colleague, Judy Wells, Unitarian minister who died of cancer on September 28th in Portland, Oregon. Judy and her husband, Dwayne, served in Cumberland Valley for 12 years here in Pennsylvania. She preached in our pulpit. Judy's dying wish was to be able to vote in this presidential election. Judy died before she could fulfill that wish. She could not vote, but literally on her last day, on her last morning, less than 12 hours before she took her last breath, Judy was writing "Get Out the Vote" postcards to people in Pennsylvania. We lift up her spirit, and Judy is glad that we are alive today to carry on the work, to celebrate and honor all those who went before. As many of you have seen, folks are doing this joyfully in many places, including in Philadelphia. We're going to see a video now of Joy to the Polls dancing in Philly. Let's dance along. People, this is it. This is our election right now. Let's give every hour. Do not stop. Go every hour strong until we get out every vote we can. Let's do this. Game time. Who? Let's dance.
Back in Philly this weekend, we got one other amazing scene that got a bunch of national attention. I mean, voters showed us that while the 6 feet distance is needed for social distancing because of COVID, 6 feet is also apparently, scientifically speaking, it's the exact amount of space you need to properly perform the cha-cha slide. If you are wondering why we had to blur the guy who's the really good dancer, that guy in front, we had to blur his shirt, it's because his shirt features a short and to the point expletive followed by the word 2020. You can guess.